Terraria for sure has its collection of niche weapon subclasses throughout the game, each offering the player more choice of variety in the way they dish out damage. For the melee class at least, you have things like yo-yos, spears, and boomerangs, which each can provide an alternative to the classic old sword. Today, we're going to be looking at an extremely forgotten weapon that falls into the Flail subclass and determine whether it could be a hidden gem having the highest base damage of any flail, or just straight up garbage. Of course, I'm talking about the Flow Pow. Before we jump into it though, if you enjoy these types of weapon reviews, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to help support the channel. Alrighty, let's first see how you get this thing. The Flow Pow actually finds itself within Plantera's drop pool, meaning you're of course going to want to enter your jungle after defeating the 3 mech bosses and find a Plantera bulb. If you've just entered this stage, I'd recommend sleeping in a bed to accelerate time, as this will increase the chances of bulbs spawning. Also, before you initiate the fight, make sure to get a solid large open arena built first, which is especially essential for the melee class. When you do think you're ready, smash that bulb and we can get taking it down. When it comes to weapons during the fight, your best bet is by far the Death Sickle, having enough piercing to pass through the tentacles and enough range to keep you safe. But if you don't fancy grinding for this though, the Light Disc also works a charm, but it's just a little harder to use. Anyway, however you defeat Plantera, upon opening her treasure bag, you'll have a 14.29% chance of obtaining the Flow Pow. Okay, with it in hand, let's see if it really deserves its lack of recognition. When I first picked up this weapon, I had pretty high hopes, as it's essentially just a buffed version of the Dribbler Crippler, a fantastically hard-mode flail. Its functionality is almost identical, having multiple ways to attack, such as spinning and holding the flail out, but is absent to firing a spiky ball, which is the Dribbler Crippler's signature ability. And you know what? This kind of made me realise, for being obtained so much later in the game, it's really not that much more powerful than the Dribbler Crippler. Not gonna lie, this did concern me a bit. And what's even more worrying is the fact the Seedler, the sword drop from Plantera, actually deals more DPS, even with just the projectile alone, without obviously having all the consequences of a flail's slow fire rate. So at this point, you may be thinking it's looking pretty rough for the Flow Pow, but luckily, there is one more offensive ability that can be shown off against real enemies. Yep, the flail head actually has the unique effect to rapidly fire pink petals at nearby enemies, dealing 66.67% of the weapon's base damage. At first I thought this was pretty cool, but unfortunately, once again, compared to other weapons at this stage, it doesn't really do anything for me. Like, the fact the petals don't release during a normal throw makes it pretty redundant, as it's not like you're going to be using that as your main source of DPS instead. So yeah, pretty disappointing stuff. But hey, let's see if it can bring it back against some bosses. Golem is of course the next boss most Terrarians will face, and is usually a walk in the park. But to be honest, this was the point where I realised why throwable flails get completely zoned out past this point, as I found it surprisingly low single target damage to not really dent Golem. And it seemed only logical halfway through the fight to switch to the Flare-On, a flail that performs infinitely better than any other in the game, and can technically be obtained pre-mech boss. Either way, if you really want, you can keep using the Flow Pow still, but it'll just take you a little longer than you'd usually expect. So I mean, surely that's the end of the Flow Pow, right? And possibly throwable flails in general. Well, kinda. As against the much smaller boss like the Cultist, you can kinda use its spinning attack to deal moderate damage, but the chances of you surviving the whole fight doing this is very small. The only real use you're going to get out of the Flow Pow post Plantera are in situations that consist of long lines of low HP enemies, such as the Old One's army, or even the Moon invasions. And funnily enough, without digging into it too far, this is what initially impressed me with this thing. But the reality is, as soon as anything with a high enough health pool, or a damn mini-boss shows up, you're going to infinitely benefit switching to something else, as it just doesn't quite cut it. All in all, I think it's safe to say that the Flow Pow does not get the gem status. But you know what? If it happens to be the melee Plantera drop you get, why not keep it with you for clearing them first few waves of an invasion, as it might just speed things up, farming for something else. This has been sockrteez, and I'll see you in the next one.